All right, it's Best Ball Night School. I'm Jeremiah. This is Ed. Ed, we're getting our grades up. Ed, what are you cooking? You're on the clock.
So, Jeremiah, I just started this big board. I drew the 107. So far, pretty typical start. I think pretty chalk start. McCaffrey, Hill, Lamb, Jefferson, Brees Hall, Chase, Jamar Chase off the board. I'm at the 107. I'm looking at Bijan, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Puka Nacua. Those are usually the three guys that I'm on at around that spot. That's what I'm looking at. I'm leaning Bijan because there's been some interesting news about some Kirk Cousins talk, and the Falcons may want to try and get that Atlanta Falcons stack with a Kirk on it. What do you think about this big board? Where do you usually go when you're picking out of around this range? So 107 to 109, 110-ish.
Really what you're looking at, like between Amon-Ra, Puka, Bijan, Gibbs, those four, you're just trying to chop it up and change it up. And then you have a different build each time. You almost have to have that discipline because your eyes are just like glowing at the fact that you could pick Bijan right now. There's times where you're going to have to say, I haven't had much Amon-Ra, so how do you get him? You click him. But I like what you're doing with Bijan Robinson. I see that you have him up further in the queue, so there's that little bit of preference there. I love the bullish nature of what you're talking about. If Kirk Cousins goes to the Atlanta Falcons, really any capable quarterback, it's going to be an exciting thing. You're talking about Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and then the capability of Kirk Cousins is also there with Bijan Robinson. He can hand it off. He can dump it off just the same. We talked about last week, Justin Fields, building him some. We had a team that I had where we were trying to get some Falcons sacks, but now the exercise can be with Kirk Cousins. I actually like it more for Bijan's skill set for you to go Kirk Cousins. So if you want to draw it up and you want to start here, I really like you going with Bijan Robinson.
All right. Bijan Robinson. It is. Jeremiah, we had a pretty newsworthy week. The NFL Combine concluded. We had a lot of men running in underwear very fast. There's been some risers in the underdog draft. So we've got like a rapid fire thing going on here. We're going to throw out some names along with how far they've risen in ADP. And we're going to see whether or not we're in or out. Jeremiah, we're going to start with Jalen Wright, who is up 22.8 spots in ADP. Are you in or out with Jalen Wright at his new ADP?
Scott Barrett, he talks, I listen from Fantasy Points. He cited that Jalen Wright's broad jump is the fourth best ever since 2000 with an 89th percentile vertical jump. He's comped him to Alvin Kamara and even is talking a little bit like a Brees Hall light. I am going to personally shave exposure down at ADP in the big board. I will sprinkle. I'll still attack ADP in the next tourney because that'll be just a new open spot. So nobody is ahead of me as far as ADP goes. Cash games I'm in. I'm only competing against 11 other people. I have 46% exposure in the big and the little board. So my ADPs that I've had are in the 196 all the way into the 220s. So Jalen right now, he's in the early round 13. You're not necessarily going to win or lose by having where I have him in the 7-round differential, but I'm a lot better set up than so many other people who were with me drafting him at those spots in the draft. But right now, in round 13, I'm going to shave off some exposure, but I'm really going to look out for that next tourney for Jalen Wright.
Love the humble brag with the 46% exposure to Jalen Wright. Good job by you. Next player we're going to talk about is Ricky Pearsall, 16 spots up in ADP. Are you in or out, Jeremiah?
So I'm out in big board, and I was out before. So for me, I've missed the boat, and now there's a run on him. I'll let other people have that win. I will get him in the next tourney. I'm in on cash games. Again, that's versus 11 other people. I still like it. He had a 4.41, 90 percentile, 40-yard dash. That's from Player Profiler. The dude can move. Xavier Worthy and Brian Thomas Juniors, they grabbed our attention. As we drink water from the fire hydrant, Pearsall looks like a good click.
Xavier Worthy, the winner of the Combine, so to speak, with the record-setting 40. He's up 12.5 spots in ADP. Are you in or out, Jeremiah?
Oh, I'm in. You've heard it all weekend, 4.2240. The lazy comp is John Ross. All right, Woke is having 38% exposure to him, and that feels good. I will keep printing tickets. and we'll talk about this later with Xavier Worthy. For you, Ed, Roman Wilson, 11.6 spots up. Where are you at?
So I'll be in only because I currently have no exposure. I really wasn't too in on Roman Wilson. I know that there's a lot of hype, especially because he had a great Senior Bowl. However, I just really wasn't clicking where he was at previously. With respect to where he's going now, he's around that Wandale Robinson, Michael Wilson area. To me, I'm probably going to look to shave some exposure off of Wandale onto Roman Wilson and a little bit more with Michael Wilson as well. So we're going from the Wandales to the Wilsons with exposure. And he ran really fast too. I think he had a 4.39. Crazy. The receivers just flew. I will definitely be still in on Roman Wilson at his new ADP.
Now, how about some Trey Benson, 9.8 spots up in underdog?
Another dude that ran crazy fast at the combine. He's 216, ran a 4.3940, speed score of 116.3, 98th percentile over at playerprofiler.com. I'll be in only because you cannot ignore guys that have a height adjusted speed score in the 98th percentile. That is a big signal for a running back that when they get opportunity has got a really good chance of smashing. So I'll be in. I'm sad that I don't have too much of him previously at his lower ADP, but I'll still be in. He's only up 9.8 spots. You're looking between Benson, Chuba Hubbard, Chandler, and Jonathan Brooks, fellow rookie Jonathan Brooks, who didn't run. I feel like the choice, if you're going running back around that area, is going to be between those guys. I'll probably lean Benson over Ty Chandler from here on out. And I'm going to wait for Brooks for his ADP to go down even further, I think, because I think that when we get a little bit closer to the season, people are going to, it's going to hit people. Hey, he's not going to be ready to start the season. I'm going to wait on him, and I'll soak up some exposure with Trey Benson and Chuba Hubbard, maybe sprinkle in some Ty Chandler around those parts, even with Trey Benson at this new ADP.
All right, there you go. Trey Benson had his grades go up. Javon Baker had his grades go up. 9.1 spots on underdog. Where are you at with him?
Man, I've never been in on Javon Baker. I just haven't. Looking at his combine, he also didn't really test too well. Ran a 4.540. Basically tested measurably. He's got other analytical college metric analytics that I usually look at, like breakout age, dominator rating. I'm just not really in on him to begin with. He's an older wide receiver at 22. It's typically a guy I'm not really looking to get too much of. His ADP, granted, he's only going with ADP. So I guess at that point in the draft, you're talking about picks that you're getting close to when we're actually drafting, and the draft's going to come up to the season. They're not, those rounds aren't going to exist. So I guess you might as well sprinkle them in a little bit, but I'm usually drafting either my third quarterback, third tight end around those parts, or another running back. I'll be out because I just don't get Javon Baker.
Hey, good point on the team build. Shifting over to Will Shipley, very intriguing, up 9 spots. What do you think, Ed?
I was in on Will Shipley prior to him rising up after the combine. I am still in on him now. His spike in ADP is rather short. He's only up, as you said, 9 spots. That's usually around the time of the draft that I am looking to draft. Again, your 5th, 6th running back. To me, Shipley profiles as a great satellite back plus, so to speak, right? He caught a lot of balls in college. He saw 38 receptions in 2022, 31 receptions in 2023, has a 9.6% college target share, which puts him in the 75th percentile among college prospects per player profiler. That's the type of guy that I'm looking to invest in. He's also over 200 pounds, which is another great signal for another satellite back plus. And he ran really well with the 40. He's got pretty good athletic metrics. So I'm in on him, even though he is now up 9 spots. Jeremiah, let's pivot to another rookie. Again, Xavier Legette. Are you in or out? He's up 7.8 spots in ADP.
For me, I will click sometimes. Had a 4.39, 40-inch vertical. And he's going to be a player that people are hot and cold on. I'll click other players more at his ADP, though. Right now, I'm looking at Isaiah Likely at tight end, 165. Jalen Polk, 168. Malachi Corley, 174. Ray Davis at running back, good pass-catching running back. Talk about when you want to build your 5th or 6th running back. Ray Davis is at 174. Elijah Moore, people have quit on him, but I still think he has something good there left to be had at 176. Really, essentially what I'm going to do with Xavier Legette is I'm going to mix him in. So we're not going too crazy, but we are sprinkling some for him.
Jeremiah Burton, next prospect we're going to be talking about. Are you in or out?
Jermaine Burton's 7.5 spots up. I'm indifferent. I will draft, but not too much. Beautiful thing with him only going up about 7 spots. It's not going to crush our drafts. That's not even a round's difference, but it is a delta that we have looked at. 7.5 spots. I'm indifferent. I'll sprinkle in some, but nothing too crazy.
Johnny Wilson. His ADP is up as much as he has inches on other players at the wide receiver position. The tall wide receiver, he is up 7.4 spots. Are you in or out on Johnny Wilson?
Oh, for me, he's 20th round ADP. I've been out. I'll stay out. Post-draft will determine the bullishness. The Chiefs or the Dolphins landing spot would make fans irrational. With his longest wingspan ever for wide receiver recorded at the Combine. Now, Ed, you had another pick. Let's see what you got cooking.
Sure. I'm on the clock here. This is the last round of this draft. This is, I believe, a little board that I'm in here. I've already got some Mahomes, Kelsey correlation. That's the one stack. And then, unfortunately, I didn't really hit too many other stacks. I got Caleb as my second quarterback. Have some Raiders, although obviously I think we don't really think he's going to go there. I'm pretty sure he's going on the Bears. And then we sprinkled in some Daniel Jones with Wandale and Hyatt at the end just to get some more correlation there. So this is the last pick. We're in the 20th round. This is pick 237. I've got players in the queue that include Brendan Rice, another rookie who apparently did not increase his ADP with his combine performance. And then we also got some running backs that I would prefer here as well. Evan Hull, Michael Carter, your boy Michael Carter, Jeremiah, and then Samaj Pirine, who I really haven't drafted at all, but I think that there is some ambiguity about that Broncos backfield. Jeremiah, what do you think of where we're at here? Where would you lean with respect to this next pick here?
So we're 3-3 on our bookends. Our quarterback, we have 3, our onesies. And tight end, we have 3 tight ends. We like that. I like what you have for Daniel Jones. I believe last week we were talking about a backdoor stack with Daniel Jones. Maybe you get Jalen Hyatt in there, and then you also have Darius Slayton, who may sign or not sign. But you also, in this build, you were able to include Wandale Robinson. So applause to you there. Very fun build. We're looking at 5 running backs, 8 receivers. I think you might want to lean for a 6th running back or a 9th wide receiver. Taking a look at your running back build, Travis Etienne, we believe we're going to be bullish on him. There were some reports coming out talking about he's going to have a lighter workload. We've heard that narrative a million times. Tank Bixby, if you can sell him off any pop in dynasty leagues, please do. Travis Etienne, I'm going to buy any kind of dip on him not being the full-on bell cow or having a lighter workload. I like him as an anchor. Tajay Spears, you got him so much later at pick 69. Excellent point. I'm hearing some buzz that he will be RB1. Javonte Williams at Denver, another year out from his injury. We have a bullish case there. Ray Davis, just a flexible player for that pass-catching role. And Dameon Pierce could have opportunity in Houston. Again, he's a running back. So I would say, can you shift down to your receivers? Scroll down through them. All right, we love Tyreek, love Ayuk. Christian Watson, he's a little bit of a gamble right now. Jacoby Myers lifts our boats. He's a very consistent player. Khalil Shakir and Gabe Davis, I like what you did there. The blackjack split that we talked about at positions that Theo Greminger has talked about. Shakir and Davis. Davis is likely out in Buffalo. Shakir, I think, can rise up. He's a talented baller. And Gabe Davis is just that perfect best ball player. You're not frustrated. You draft him today, and you don't worry about him all season versus week to week. You're just ripping your hair out. Wandale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt, we love the coverage there for the Giants stack. So I think you're very flexible here. You can go running back. What's your bullish case? You clicked on Evan Hull. What made you click on Evan Hull in your queue?
So I liked Evan Hull last year, and I think Bradley Stalter is also on Evan Hull. I've talked with him as well about this. We've talked about combine performances, right? So let's talk about Evan Hull, who has an 80th percentile speed score of 104.7, 81st percentile burst score, 81st percentile agility score. And he also had a college target share of 17.3%. We liked Will Shipley, who was in the single digits in the percentage there. So Evan Hull blows him out of the water. I think Hull is going to look to get that backup role on the Colts. I think he just got really unlucky last year with the injury. And I think he's going to be the next man up in the event of a JT injury. We don't have any JT on this team. That's why I clicked on him in the queue here. He'd be my 6th running back. That is where I'm leaning. So I think I'm going to hit up Hull here and call this draft complete.
I like that. And with Evan Hull, I enjoy what you said calling back earlier about Will Shipley being your 5th or 6th running back in this event. Evan Hull, you made that kind of comparison. Here he is. He's your 6th running back. So you have a 3-6-8-3 build in the 20-round draft. Very good job. And you've tied one up. We send another one out there and hope that it wins and cashes.
So Jeremiah, we had some high-profile players that were opting out of the combine. Caleb Williams didn't participate. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabors, all no-shows. There was some fantasy analyst that made an absolute buffoon of himself calling out Caleb Williams on this. But what do you make of high-profile players opting out of the combine or parts of the combine? What's your take on this?
I'll say also that guy, just period. Just no, we're not doing that. If you're up there, you try and ask a good question. And I know you want to stand out, but that just isn't the way. Moving on, I think it is good business. The owners care about money and then winning. All right, just look at the push for 18 games in that schedule. You had Caleb, Marvin, Nabors opt out, and then you also had some players be selective in what they're opting out from. They have enough information given to them that lets them know that they're locked in. Where can you go except for lower by exposing yourself to a mediocre or just an off day? Let's say you're just dehydrated some. It happens to people. Your stock would go down. So players have limited times in their career where they have this form of agency, and this is one of them. One thing that will happen is there seems to be some gamification where players will weigh in and then they'll cut the weight and then run good at their pro day. So there is some gaming there, but in a situation where everyone's trying to evaluate you on just anything, why not game it in your favor? And in this case, the players do have that in their favor. Ed, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeremiah. This is the players' time. They have to do whatever they feel comfortable doing. As a fantasy player, right, we obviously really care and we're invested in this because there are some performance metrics that are indicative of future fantasy success that we care about. And quite honestly, as long as we get those metrics in some way, shape, or form, even if it's through a pro day, I'm fine with it, right? I don't care. As long as a running back runs the 40 at their pro day, we'll adjust that as it's supposed to be adjusted because it's at their pro day, and we'll get what their height adjusted speed score is. And that's really one of the big metrics that we care about when we're dealing with running back prospects. Same thing with the tight end. I know that Brock Bowers didn't run the 40, right? He's another guy that opted out. As long as he runs the 40 at Georgia's pro day, I could care less what he did at the combine. Okay. I just need to know whether or not he is this vertical seam stretcher of a tight end, or he's going to be some plotter possession guy with his 40 time, like a Hunter Henry or Cole Kmet running like a 4.7, right? We all think he's the former, right? And I would be shocked if he runs 4.7. I think it's going to be a much higher than that, but we need to at least see that with our own eyes, I think, and because athleticism matters a lot when it comes to trying to predict future fantasy success. And as long as we get that in some way, shape, or form, I'm fine with the players doing whatever they want during the combine. So
and shout out to Matt Kelly. Matt Kelly always talks about athleticism matters in athletics. So it sounds simple, but it's true.
So Jeremiah, I'm assuming you're in a slow draft somewhere. What are you cooking up right now?
Yep. So we have Justin Fields, Drake May are my 2 quarterbacks. Can you see?
Yeah. Can you get it a little bit bigger? It's coming in pretty tiny over here. Yeah, that's much better. Thanks.
All right. And then I have the big build. This is what we were working on last week. We had Fields where we capped with the Falcons players. My running backs, remember we started Bijan and Gibbs. I ended up going with Jonathan Brooks. I didn't love the click, but I had not clicked him before. So until you click, you just don't know. You don't understand until it's real. So I clicked. It felt real. It felt just okay. I had just heard some news about Jonathan Brooks where he came out and said he's going to be good for July 1 training camp. Now, when players are optimistic versus other timelines, you do have to be careful. But just in case Robinson and Gibbs can float Jonathan Brooks, I like the opportunity in this tournament setting to have Jonathan Brooks go off in that back half of the season. And then Marshawn Lloyd, he's getting good buzz out of the combine. I'm glad to have him as my fourth running back. Again, I have Fields and Drake May. Go over to my receivers. Drake London, Malik Nabors. We'll talk about him later. Terry McLaurin, I like him with Drake May in the event that Drake May goes to Washington. All of that right now is just the ticket. JSN, all right, Jackson Smith and Jigba. People are high on all these wide receivers who are coming in, but maybe we just need to re-roll with the sophomore receivers, and they have another year of seasoning there. So let's not sleep on JSN. Marquise Brown, I like the idea. Speaking of agency, he has an opportunity to go to another team. And then Adonai Mitchell, he did pretty well at the combine. And then I have Kyle Pitts. So I did end up, in the event that Justin Fields is an Atlanta Falcon, I have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. It'll completely fall apart if Justin Fields goes somewhere else. But worst case scenario, I have Bijan, London, and Pitts. Now, my build is a 2-4-6-1.
I was going to ask you about that, Jeremiah, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you feel pressed at tight end at all or no? I know the board is pretty gross right now for who's available, but do you feel pressed at all?
I think I want to push it at tight end. And if I have the faith and the belief that Kyle Pitts is that dude, then I think I can go into another position. One thing I've been saying and needs to be said is don't wait until Kyle Pitts gets a quarterback. We're telegraphing, we're forecasting. We understand it's not going to be Desmond Ridder. So I'm going to have the faith that it's going to be a much better quarterback. So I'm in on Kyle Pitts. Who I have at the top of the queue, I have Michael Wilson, at Jalen Wright, and Jalen Polk. I'm torn between, do I go Michael Wilson or do I go Jalen Wright? The reason I like Jalen Wright is because he could be my fifth running back. But the only thing is now we're higher up than when I was getting him in the 200s to 220s. So what do you think here between Michael Wilson and Jalen Wright?
I definitely agree with you in regards to where you're at with tight end. I think, the way that this team is set up, it assumes that the Falcons are going to be a fantasy smash this year. Yeah. And if that smash happens, Kyle Pitts is going to be a big part of it. So I totally agree with you punting tight end for another round or two and not pressing here for it. With respect to the difference between Wilson and Wright, I think you've got a very solid wide receiver room as is. With Brooks as he is, you have somebody there that you're gonna have to wait in order for him to start maybe cracking that lineup. Ideally, though, right? Bijan and Gibbs just carry you the whole season, right? That's the idea behind this, right? You also probably are not that pressed for running back as well. I guess this boils down to, you'd mentioned, I think earlier, that you wanted to shave some Jalen Wright exposure, right? Do you want to do that here, or do you still want to smash him? Because I think that he makes sense here. Mm-hmm. But if he's somebody that you're looking to shave exposure to, you may not want to click the button. Is there also a reason why, are you not in on Jaleel McLaughlin this year at all? I know that that's not really a fun player to be all in on or anything like that, but there is ambiguity in that Denver backfield. And McLaughlin, I think, did hit some metrics last year that would suggest that he may have some future success. So is there a reason why he's not in your queue either?
I see him at the top, and he appeared to me, and I did think, okay, this is somebody that I need to start filtering in at this ADP. Based on how Jalen Wright tested at the combine and how bullish we are on him, I can see him going somewhere and being, okay, let's say he gets drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. That's a banana spot. Whereas Jaleel McLaughlin might be more on that tier of, we were excited about Jalen Warren last year, did some good things, but didn't quite break out like we wanted. So right now I think I have Jaleel McLaughlin in that Jalen Warren type of basket where he's not as big as maybe Chase Brown, like the steam that Chase Brown is getting. But I am going to have to mark him down for future. I think what I want to do is I want to just say goodbye to Jalen, but just like one last time, click based on this team build. It looks good. So I'm thinking I'll go with Jalen, and then I'm serious this time. Next time, we're going to pass on him at ADP.
We'll see. We'll see. I love the pick there, even with his ADP where it's at now. I think it makes a lot of sense for this build, and I'm glad you're doing it. Glad you're doing it.
All right, I'm going to click. I got Jalen Wright to the squad. So again, to recap, 2 quarterbacks, Fields and May. My 5 running backs, Bijan, Gibbs, Jonathan Brooks. We're going to wait on his health. Marshawn Lloyd and Jalen Wright. We might be able to stop at 5, which we passed on receiver. We might be able to go and build another receiver later to compensate. And of course, we're going to have to catch up at tight end. Again, only 1 tight end with Kyle Pitts. Then our receivers, I'll list them out again. Drake London, Malik Nabors, Terry McLaurin, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marquise Brown, and Adonai Mitchell. So our team build, again, is a 2-5-6-1 build, and we'll move on to the next round. I do have a question for you. We'll segue over Marvin Harrison Jr. He's in the mid-second. Malik Nabors at 33 in round 2 at the 2-7. Roma Odunze at the 48th pick in the 4th round. Are you hot, cold, or lukewarm at their ADP?
So I want to couch this question and contextualize this in saying that regardless of where these guys are, I'm still drafting them in drafts, right? However, with where Marvin Harrison is going right now, I think he is at really, I want to say that he's at the apex of his ADP. I cannot see it getting higher, right? But I'm pretty sure I'm gonna eat those words at some point, right? I just don't see it getting higher. What do we expect here, right? What are we expecting? But he's got a pretty high price tag in the mid-second. He's going by DJ Moore. All these guys, like, they've already done it. That's the best case scenario for Marvin Harrison Jr. So I'm cold on him where he's at. Nabors is a little more interesting, although I feel like in some of the mocks that I've looked at, he has been like pressed down the board a bit more in favor of Odunze, which we'll get to. So I'm lukewarm on Nabors with respect to where he's at. He's a lesser version of Marvin Harrison, but I think there's also risk there that he gets pushed down the draft board. Maybe he'll probably still go top 10. I think he'll probably still go top 10, but maybe his landing spot is not as great as we thought it would be. I've seen a mock recently where he was going to the Bears, right? Where granted that'd be a great 1-2 punch in real football with Malik Nabors and DJ Moore, but that'll be a nightmare for fantasy football. Absolute nightmare, especially for where Nabors is going at present. And I will say Roma Odunze with his combine performance won me over. I was not really too into him prior to the combine. But man, the dude, he's out there doing drills like till nobody's left. And you know, his bar graphs on player profiler are just out of control, right? 80th percentile and above, right? In all the metrics that we're looking at. He checks every box. So I would say that whereas I was probably lukewarm or cold on Odunze previously and prior to the combine, I'm now pretty hot on him, quite honestly. And I probably want to get some more exposure to Odunze. Jeremiah, what about you guys? What about you with these guys? Are you hot, lukewarm, or cold on these 3 rookie wide receivers?
All right, as Tow Mater in the movie's Cars said, if I'm lying, I'm crying. And for all 3, I am buying. All right, Odunze to Nabors to Marvin Harrison Jr. is my excitement level. That's my logic. Essentially, cheapest to most expensive. We love Odunze, then Nabors, and Marvin Harrison Jr. I want a ticket to ride the ride. I'm here to pay the admission. Odunze, I'm hot for. Nabors, I'm hot. Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm going to pay the ticket before I get towed by Tow Mater. So I'm all about all 3. And it's going to be at the expense of other stud players. But in these tournament settings, you're going to have some exposure. It's not outright exposure. We're not clicking them every time. But like you said, where you weren't clicking Odunze, now he's going to appear on the Chiron across the scroll for you, and you're going to have to just click, and it's just going to become part of your exposure. It becomes easier after you click them. And I wouldn't be surprised you click Odunze and you're just going to be like that tingle of excitement. Whereas prior to this combine, you said you were a little more lukewarm on him. Now you're going to feel that bullish feeling by clicking his name. Now, did you have another draft you wanted to go over?
So I'm not presently on the clock with any of my drafts. If you are on the clock, I will defer to you, Jeremiah. I've got 1 or 2 picks to go in mine before I'm there. So
okay,
let's see where you're at.
So I have 2. I think we were looking at this team last year. It's a pretty wild build. I've got 2 at quarterback, and my hero build is Saquon Barkley. And then, of course, Kelsey is out there. We got him in the cash game. He fell late. People have some greatness fatigue. Again, let me read off the wide receivers. Tyreek Hill, Rashee Rice, T. Higgins, George Pickens, Chris Godwin, Brian Thomas Jr. Wow, that's fun. 4-3-3, Brian Thomas Jr. That's a little gift that unwraps. Post-combine, there'll be a gift after the draft when we see him. Tyler Lockett, just a consistent wide receiver, great guy in best ball. And then Adonai Mitchell. So now we talk about, hey, are you pressed at running back? Let's just say we're looking at running back at this point, right? With just one running back in this build. I've got 1-1-8-1. So if we're reading the room, I need a running back. I'm looking at my scroll here. I've got Kendre Miller. I can highlight Zach Charbonnet. And then I also have Marshawn Lloyd, who's later there at 155. I could go in favor for tight end. We've talked about bullish things on Pat Freiermuth, especially if Russ Wilson goes there. Michael Mayer we're in on. Of course, there's pre-COVID or pre-quarterback change. Sorry, not COVID. Roman Wilson, he's done really good. I've got Kendre Miller at the top of my queue, Pat Freiermuth, Michael Mayer, Roman Wilson, Marshawn Lloyd, and Zach Charbonnet. So if I'm going running back, which direction should I go?
I really like Kendre Miller the most out of those guys. I'm glad you have him at the top of the queue. I think he's one of these sophomore bounce back candidates at the running back position for sure. We talked about Evan Hull before, basically having a 0 rookie season because of injury. Kendre Miller is someone in the same boat. I think the Saints' vision for that backfield prior to the start of the season was to bring Miller along with Jamal Williams splitting it, and then Kamara doing what he does in the receiving game. It just didn't play out that way because Miller was hurt all the time. So I prefer Miller there. I will say it is a little tempting if you want to live dangerously and take Freiermuth here because you've got Pickens on the squad already, and you could get this backdoor Steelers stack. Although that just saying that sounds so ugly. So I would probably go running back here since you've got Barkley on the squad and he's your only one, and Kendre Miller, hopefully will rise up as like a 0 RB candidate, and I would pick him here.
Cool, right there. Thank you, Ed. I went from Saquon Barkley from pick 21 to Kendre Miller, pick 141. The talk about a gap between my first and second running back.
This is the heroist hero RB build I have seen so far, Jeremiah. Great job here.
and what's wild is if you just kind of like think of in wrestling when they throw guys against the ropes and they bounce back, you see how far you can bounce back before propelling forward. Take it like a rubber band. How far back can you snap the rubber band? And we went wild at wide receiver, but then it lets us know how we can drop and parachute in these builds by going for that second running back. So it's a huge gap, maybe the biggest gap I've done so far. But we like this. We're in the 12th round. We have 8 more rounds. And we love a lot of the running backs that are out there, guys we talked about before, like Ray Davis. All right, there's many opportunities. Evan Hull that you pointed out. So we have some good options still on the board at running back. And we're so happy with what we've built. And then, of course, there's less pressure with having Travis Kelce on the squad.
Yeah, I think you should very easily be able to get one of those running backs on the wraparound there. It looks like you picked out of the 12-9. So I think that even if you want to reach on Marshawn Lloyd there, who also had a great combine, and you could probably do that easily there. Speaking of non-combine news, okay, we did have some movement on the free agent market. Mike Evans, who previously was reported to be testing free agency, will test free agency no longer and is back with the Buccaneers. How are you dealing with that now that he is no longer going to be on the Chiefs or the Bills or anything like that? He's still going in the middle of the second round. What are you doing with Mike Evans? And also, what are you doing with his teammate, Chris Godwin?
So we talked about a couple of shows ago, chasing the bag, legacy, or both. Mike Evans decides to chase the bag and keep his legacy as well as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He could have gone out as an artist and draw on something else, but he decided to stay in-house in Tampa Bay. Your commute, the weather consistent year-round, all the people in the building, there's a certain level of comfort there for Mike Evans. So I'm happy that he decided to stay. I'm hoping Mike and Evans and Chris Godwin both experience somewhat of a cool-off from sameness fatigue. All right, the dopamine hit that was out there. There was buzz for the Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, Texans, bringing Mike Evans in all the way up to the mid-second round. So now that rocket ship move isn't taking place, I can see some cooling off for Evans as well as Godwin, who now won't be matriculating those lost targets from that lack of target competition. It's a bummer for Trey Palmer, but the NFC South opens up opportunity for shootouts. So I would take advantage of Mike Evans just being in Tampa Bay. So I like them both. I bought in on the hope that I could have them both and they'd split off. But now I backdoored my way into, all right, my parachute here is I have some Buccaneers exposure, which isn't necessarily a team that people put at the top of their list when stacking. So what do you make of them?
I also had some builds where I was hoping for Evans to land elsewhere. I think I paired him with Mahomes in a build recently, just on a hope and dream that he would be with the Chiefs. I'm fine taking them where they're at. I would honestly prefer Godwin based on ADP, and their targets last year, again, very similar. You had Mike Evans with 136 targets compared to Godwin's 130. Obviously, Evans had the touchdown spike there. That's what he's done pretty much his entire career. But there is this thing called regression, and it can happen. Obviously, we don't expect Evans to get 2 touchdowns next season, but certainly 8 is maybe in the range of outcomes. And who's going to soak up the rest of that? Maybe it's Chris Godwin. I'm fine with drafting both of them where they're at. Obviously, it makes stacking a little bit difficult, only insofar as that Baker hasn't been re-signed yet. A lot of the speculation points to him re-signing there, but we're just not sure yet. However, I'm fine drafting both of them, although I do probably prefer Godwin based on where they're going. So, Jeremiah, I know I said I wasn't on the clock previously, but I am on the clock now, and I'm excited because I'm curious as to what you think. So this is a big board here. We are going to go into the draft right now, and that, speaking of hopium, with Evans landing somewhere, we've got some hopium here insofar as I went double running back here with Brees and Barkley, okay? And I paired Barkley with CJ Stroud because Barkley is rumored to be on the Texans. And I got some Tank Dell exposure there too. So I hope to get a nice little Texan stack here. With respect to the rest of this team, I pretty much just wound up taking, let's see if I can scroll this over a bit. George Kittle fell to pick 77. So I scooped him up. He's got an ADP of 69, scooped him up. And I did the same thing with Joe Mixon, although I think I'm going to regret that Joe Mixon pick much more. Although with Joe Mixon going in pick 100, I said, you know what? I really haven't been drafting him at all. If I am going to draft him at all this year before the start of this free agency and everything like that, if I don't pick him up at pick 101, I'm never drafting him. So I just did it there. And I think this receiver room perhaps needs some help. I did draft Cooper Kupp also, who fell below where his ADP is at. Scooped up Hopkins with the idea of perhaps getting a Titan stack a little later on. You got some interdivisional play going on there. Hopefully I could get some Levis later. And then I also took a sort of just a pipe dream chance on Jameson Williams that he takes the next step, because I think this wide receiver room is going to need somebody else to step up here. I don't know what I'm thinking with this queue. We're just going to get rid of everybody here because I'm not sure. Those guys are all it'd be way too early to take any of those guys. So we could go in a couple different directions, Jeremiah. What do you think about this here? I think we've got a relatively balanced build so far. Do we want to skew it in one direction? Or I think, quite honestly, I think we ideally need some help at receiver here. What are you thinking?
So this is an interesting scenario. You're so healthy and good at running back. Brees, Barkley, those are just two of the killer bees at the top. And then Joe Mixon, there's a big gap there. Pick 20 to 101. We talked about Saquon Barkley to Kendre Miller. Here's Saquon Barkley with your pick 20, and then you didn't go third running back until pick 101. Like you said, Joe Mixon right there. If you're not going to take him then, when will you take him? Another running back who's like that, he fell to me last week. It was Austin Eckler. I thought, you know what, I need to get him going there. I do think you need a wide receiver. It's funny, it's topical. We went over CJ last week talking about his ADP is way too high, right? The rent's too high. The Stroud ADP is too high. But again, you're like water. You have a Bayesian process. You try and get new information, and you bring CJ Stroud in. And I like what you got there. You got some exposure to Tank Dell, and I have the same like mind with you with Saquon Barkley there. So you have three options as well. I see you just moved up in the queue, Xavier Worthy. I really like what you're doing with Xavier Worthy there, moving him up. He's going to be very much a player who's going to rise up these boards. You are at pick 116, and his ADP is at 121. I like him a lot more than Mike Williams, Keon Coleman. It's a rocket ship up for Xavier Worthy. So he's ADP of 121 and rising. As your fifth wide receiver here, I really like it a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. We're going to talk about him. Actually, why don't we just segue into talking about him right now? Because I'm going to take him here, Jeremiah. With respect to Xavier Worthy, I mean, if he goes anywhere in the later rounds, which is where, later round one, I should say, this ADP is going to skyrocket. I think you're probably looking at an ADP that's probably closer to pick 80 than pick 121, where it's at right now. If he goes anywhere near the Chiefs, the Bills, a lot of even the Lions picking at the end of round one, those are all within the range of possibility here. And I think with his 40 time, it's very likely that there's going to be a team that takes him in the first round. I think without a doubt. There's just no way. The dude is a stud. He's got the early breakout age of 18.4 per player profiler. He just basically came on and just started dominating as soon as he got to college, unlike some other wide receivers who he's been compared to by some people with the blazing 40 time in John Ross. He's going right now around some of these older, uglier running backs. Not yet. I could envision taking him over Joe Mixon very easily come April. So I'm going to draft him here. Jeremiah, what do you think of Xavier Worthy after his historic combine performance?
For Xavier Worthy, it's huge. We don't want to double count anything for the draft, but it just confirms some of what we already knew. Is he going to go to the moon? He might possibly be another person who goes to the moon. His ADP is rising 121 and higher. Pre-draft up to the NFL draft, I can see it raising up to round 8. If he gets the nut landing spot, it will be tough not to have him creep into the round 6 or 7. If you look at 72 to 84 for ADP for picks, I like him over Ramondre Stevenson, Christian Watson, Nick Chubb, Tony Pollard. So there's just a handful of guys right there. I have him more even with somebody like David Montgomery at 74 and Brock Bowers at 76. So here he is at 121. When I read off those lists of players from 72 to 84 in that ADP range, there's quite a few that I like Xavier Worthy more than them. Xavier Worthy, we've been getting him at an excellent price, and now he's moving up. Ed, what do you think of Xavier Worthy?
I'm not quite there with you at the tier that you have listed. I'm like maybe slightly below there. Like I said, I would probably take him where some of the older running backs are going, right? Eckler, Connor, Mixon, they're all around sort of the 80s. That's probably the highest that I could see taking him and justifying that pick, with the assumption that he's getting a nuts landing spot going at the end of round 1. We talked about how some people are a bit crazy in comparing Xavier Worthy to the last guy who broke the combine record in John Ross, who, newsflash, he was a top 10 pick, right? John Ross. Like that's what that combine performance did for him. We've been talking, or at least I've been envisioning Worthy as this round 2 player prior to the combine, but some team could go crazy and just go, you know what, Xavier Worthy top 10. It could happen. And then you're looking at an even bigger spike in ADP in comparison to that, the lazy John Ross comparison. Xavier Worthy just blows him out of the water as a prospect. Worthy did things in college that Ross never did in Washington. Again, he's got a 97th percentile breakout age, an 89th percentile, 29.5% college target share, and then a college dominator rating in the 68th percentile per player profiler. Worthy was already a great prospect prior to this combine performance, and I'm all in, quite honestly. I can't wait to get. I already had some pretty high exposure prior to the combine, and I'm still clicking on him until he probably gets to that 80-ish ADP tier or like above there, I think.
Yeah, so I think it's going to go up. And when you got to think these top 3 receivers have such a high ADP with Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabors, and Roma Odunze. So Xavier Worthy could be that 4th guy. He's really competing with Brian Thomas Jr. in a lot of rankings that I see.
So Jeremiah, are you on the clock anywhere? Are you ready to make a pick somewhere? Or
yes, sir.
What are you cooking up in this slow draft here?
All right, I want your advice. I need some counsel, fantasy litigator. I have Trevor Lawrence as my quarterback. And then I started this draft with Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane. My 2 tight ends, bully build, is Sam Laporta and Evan Ingram. And then my 4 receivers, this is where I paid for it a little bit. My first wide receiver is T. Higgins. Then I have Christian Kirk to pair with Trevor Lawrence. Brian Thomas Jr., cool. There's another gift, 433. We're bullish on him. There's even been talks about him if he could get drafted with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, of course, Jacoby Myers, he lifts all boats. I have a T-Law, Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram stack going. In my queue, I have Jared Goff, who could cap with Laporta and Gibbs. And then I have Trey Benson, Chuba Hubbard. And then for receiver, I have Khalil Shakir, Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson's way further back. So really it's a 4 of Goff, Trey Benson, and Chuba Hubbard at running back, and then Khalil Shakir at receiver. Would you go and cap this team?
I think if you do go Goff here, you're not drafting quarterback again probably until round 18 to 20, right? So yeah, I think that it would be nice to have the 2 triple stacks there, right? Or the stacks there between the Jaguars and the Lions. I think that could work. You also have Brian Thomas in there, that he could very well be a Jaguar as well. Like, it's possible if they're not able to bring back Calvin Ridley. So there is, some hidden correlation there too, I think. Yeah, I think that you're fine with Gibbs Achane, right? You're banking on Achane being an absolute smash, right? Where he's at. You're taking him at pick 17. The assumption there is that he is going to be top 5 running back, right? And you've got Gibbs even higher. Again, the assumption there is that he's going to be a top 5 running back. You've got to play that. So I would not go running back here. I know you got Trey Benson up there in the queue as well as Chuba Hubbard. I think that this is probably an appropriate place to take them, but I probably would push them back a bit further and not take them here. I would probably just cap it off with Goff and just hope to hammer wide receiver with reckless abandon later on in the draft. That's probably how I would approach this. And the stacks make it look sexy. So I would just make it sexy and add Jared Goff here.
So thank you for that. I'm thinking if I go Jared Goff, I'm going to click Jared Goff and we'll talk about it.
I think your computer, it was processing the idea of Jared Goff and sexy being in the same sentence, and it just combusted there. And I think that's what happened there. So you were saying, I think you were leaning Goff, but you were going to discuss some other options later on in the draft as to how to attack perhaps wide receiver or other positions here.
Yep. So if I go Jared Goff, who I went with him. He's on the team. Welcome to the squad. I'm probably going to entertain this just being a 2 quarterback draft, just since I invested so heavily. But to your point, round 18 to 20, I'm really going to consider that being my 3rd quarterback territory. I'm not going to chase anywhere soon. I will have to build my running back room. My tight end room is very good. But really, like you said, we have to attack receiver. Further down at 149, we have Michael Wilson, 151, Roman Wilson, those Wilson brothers, as we talked about. Wan'Dale Robinson at 158. So those are going to be some good options to get as our 5th wide receiver on this team. So I appreciate the counsel there. We've got some good stacks going with the Jaguars and the Lions. Now, over the draft, we talk about J.J. McCarthy. He's out there, and he's steamed up the boards. He became quarterback 4, and before that had really happened, we didn't hear much about it. It was just the big 3, and then all of a sudden it's become a big 4. What do you make with J.J. McCarthy steaming up real NFL draft boards? Who do you think emerges as QB5 between Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr.?
Yeah, McCarthy, he's steaming up because of the anticipated draft capital, right? For me, I've been trying to again, we were talking about if you were going to go quarterback with that last build, you're probably going, 18 to 20. And that is J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix territory, right? Perhaps Bo Nix, 20 round Bo Nix, right? Preferably. But I've as like a 3rd quarterback, I've been throwing those guys in about equally. I think that in just digesting a lot of the mock drafts, it seems as if the NFL sort of views Bo Nix in a better light than Michael Penix. I haven't really seen Penix mocked in the 1st at all. I've seen Bo Nix mocked in the 1st. I've seen it. I've seen him mocked in the 2nd to my New York Giants, right? I haven't really seen Penix around the same area that Bo Nix has been in these mock drafts. And for me, when it comes to quarterback, particularly if you're talking about a quarterback that already is going to be getting later draft capital, even later round 1, right? An early day 2 draft capital, that's where I want my quarterback to be, is with worst case scenario is later round 1, early round 2. There's been a lot of quarterbacks that get the opportunity if they are essentially viewed as a 1st rounder that fell by their team. I think Drew Brees was a 2nd round quarterback. Derek Carr was a 2nd round quarterback. All those guys get opportunity because of where they're taken there. And they were taken, again, early round 2. So I will, at this point, I do have Nix pretty much over and above Penix, but I have been splitting basically that 3rd quarterback between McCarthy and Bo Nix pretty evenly, I think. Jeremiah, what do you see with how the QB4 is played out, with McCarthy being the favored, and how do you view Nix and Penix in the best ball drafts?
It's funny, just good dancing of saying both their names because they go off about the same, and you're like, okay, which one? Very good. You finessed that beautifully. I'll say it is fire hydrant season. We're drinking water from a fire hydrant, and we did a rapid fire to start the show, and we really are just getting a lot of impressions. And I would just say with people on Twitter, take in a lot of information. You're processing it. You're not going to get it all right away, and we're not going to get it all right away. And things will change. And take J.J. McCarthy. He picked up real steam. Penix, he has an excellent arm. Lucky Brooks has mentioned challenges with the intermediate passes on podcasts. So some of those shorter area throws, not just the cannon arm throws. Nix has arm strength concerns, and he's more of a high percentage short throw guy. So we've had J.J. McCarthy. Thor Nystrom was big on J.J. McCarthy, and plenty of signal occurred afterward beyond Thor Nystrom's enthusiasm. So for me, I really have to look at these 2 quarterbacks who I see some bullish cases for both. And I'm just going to let the draft wave and the draft hype take over. If somebody gets steam between Penix and Nix, then I'm going to just digest that. Just wasn't necessarily on JJ McCarthy, but I brought in new information, and we have no choice but to be fluid in processing that. So now I'm looking at JJ McCarthy, respecting him as a super flex pick, and now as a tangible pick in these underdog best ball streets. Now, did you have one more draft?
So I'm still not on the clock. I've got some clock milkers in these drafts here. I am literally just 1 pick away, 2 picks away, 3 picks away in 4 drafts. If you got one fired up, we can see what you're cooking here.
Yep. So this is a big board. So could use your counsel here for night school. My grades have been down. I got to get them up. My quarterbacks, Justin Fields and Tua Tagovailoa. My running back position, Devon Achane, and I have Alvin Kamara. Look at that gap, 17 for Devon Achane and 65 for Alvin Kamara. Roschon Johnson, I'm a big fan of Roschon Johnson. Could it blow up in my face and it's Khalil Herbert? Sure. But I am clicking Roschon Johnson plenty. Kendre Miller, another guy we like. We had talked about earlier in the offseason, wasn't so big. And now I'm marinating, I'm warming up, I'm heating up to the idea of Kendre Miller, and I'm going to get some exposure to him. And then Jalen Wright, we've talked about him ad nauseum. So those are my 5 running backs there. My 2 tight ends are Evan Ingram and Jawan Johnson. You'll be happy to know it was between Jawan Johnson and Jatavian Sanders. And I said, look, I got to do something different. I just have to. All right, I got a problem. And I went with Jawan Johnson. My bullish case and idea with Jawan Johnson is that he could be in that, Clint Kubiak offense, where they get a little bit more motion, have more creativity, and hopefully convert more for the New Orleans Saints in the red zone. So that's where I have my bullish case on Jawan Johnson. My wide receivers, Garrett Wilson. All right, he was a guy, okay, he's 8th overall. I want to believe in him. I took him, I believe, over a couple of those Bijan Gibbs running backs just because, hey, I got to get some exposure to Garrett Wilson. Jalen Waddle is stacked with Tua. Drake London, I'm all in on London this year. It could work out with London and Fields in this build, but if not, I still love Drake London as a wide receiver 1. JSN we talked about before. And Tyler Lockett, I have 2 Seattle guys going. And then, of course, Adonai Mitchell is there as my 6th wide receiver. So it's a 2-5-6-2 build. Which direction do you think I should go? I'm in the 16th round.
Yeah, I absolutely love this running back room that you built. I think there is a lot of floor as well as upside in it, with Miller and Wright providing a lot of upside there. Roschon, I think, provides both floor and upside, and Achane and Kamara are just going to do what they do. And you've got Achane stacked with Waddle and Tua. This looks like an extremely solid build, and I love it. I see that you have highlighted Benson. Is that somebody that you're thinking about pulling the trigger on later? What makes you? What do you like? What do you like about Sanat? I haven't really clicked on him at all, so I'm curious as to what your case is for him.
Really, right now, I'm just trying to get all the calibrated to the rookie tight end names. I had a little Theo Johnson earlier in this offseason. We know Brock Bowers and JT Sanders are the 2 big ones. Benson is another one that I just want to get familiar with his game, and he's somebody who I feel like at 233 ADP, I can get him at the end of this build as a 3rd tight end. If I fail on Noah Fant, I'm bullish on Noah Fant as a free agent. He's going to be a gift that unwraps when he goes to a new team. So really, Benson, again, we talked about drinking water from a fire hydrant. I'm trying to learn more about him. He's the type of guy that I'm going to put on my radar at least. Even if I put him in the queue and don't draft him, I'm starting to get some acuity on the fact that, hey, he's at 233 ADP. I will point out my receivers here. If I want to build more receivers, I've got Zay Jones, Elijah Moore. Do you like any of them? Curtis Samuel?
Curtis Samuel intrigues me only insofar as I feel like he's the type of guy that if he does go somewhere, he's going to get these manufactured touch looks. I do like him, and I have clicked on him in a couple drafts around this spot because at this point, you're at pick, is it 185? Is that where you're at right now, or is it 65?
Correct. 180.
Yeah, so 85. Yeah, so he's well below his ADP. He's somebody that I could click here. I think you also had, I think Tez Walker's still on the board too. He's another guy that blazed at the combine. You're probably looking at, though, best case scenario, day 2 for him. He's probably, I think he might even be a day 3 type of receiver, so we may not want to invest in him. But I do agree with you. I think if you were going to go somewhere here, it definitely should be wide receiver. You're pretty set at tight end, especially if you're going to go later with either Fant or Sanat. Running back, you could probably not even touch that for the rest of the draft and still feel good. Ideally, you probably want to add a 6, but even if you don't, like, I feel like that's a really solid build you have there. So I would definitely go wide receiver. For me, man, I would probably lean Samuel over who's on the board so far, but it's really like dealer's choice, quite honestly. Like, I don't think for these veterans here, there's really a wrong move. Do you like Zay Jones? Do you think he's back on the Jaguars this year? Or there's like talk, I think of, I don't recall if he's a free agent or if he's a cut candidate, but do you think that he's coming back to the Jags or no?
For Zay Jones, I don't know, but I just like the fact that he just seems to be one of those players, not quite like Jacoby Myers, but he just lifts boats on your best ball squads when you're layering him down beyond your 5th or your 6th wide receiver. So that's where I look to Zay Jones. I have gotten Zay Jones more actually when I have Trevor Lawrence. But again, if he's out of town, I'll have to respect that. But I do what you say about Curtis Samuel. I have not clicked much Curtis Samuel. Last year, I do recall, I remember last week we were talking about Chuba Hubbard, and you had said something about how he really came through for you late in the season. So sometimes we recall what happened in redraft. And I can recall last year being in a jam quite a few times and clicking on some Curtis Samuel as my 3rd receiver when I needed to stream, like a waiver wire play. So Curtis Samuel really does have some good weeks. And sometimes he plays up that PPR scam. And then he also gets those manufactured touches, like you said. Understanding underdog is a half-point PPR format. I think I'm going to click Curtis Samuel.
Nice. Up that exposure. I think that's a great pick. And this build is looking great. It's been coached up wonderfully, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Get my grades up. We have a 2.572 build. So for the people at home, we'll read this down and then we'll be on our way out. I've got Justin Fields and Tua. My running backs right now so far are Devon Achane, Alvin Kamara, Roshan Johnson, Kendre Miller, Jalen Wright. Oh, another note, between Kamara and Kendre, maybe we split something off there. If not, I still like the utility between the pass game and the gap game for Kendre Miller. Our receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle stacked with Tua, Drake London, JSN, and Tyler Lockett. Even though we don't have Geno stacked with this team, I have 2 excellent shares of the Seattle offense. Adonai Mitchell, we have the Swiss Army knife option in Curtis Samuel. And then my 2 tight ends are Evan Ingram and Javon Johnson. We'll be looking for a tight end later. So I'm going to stop sharing that.
Yeah, that's a great build, Jeremiah. It's been a great time here at the night school. I hope everybody listening has learned some stuff. I know I learned some stuff all the time talking to Coach Retzlaff over here for Ed DeLauder and Jeremiah Retzlaff. School's out.
Peace.